Hey guys, welcome to Real Fit. We are here today with a guest that I'm really excited to have, Arjun Dhingra. And just to tell you a little bit about Arjun, he works in the mortgage industry. And yes, we will talk about mortgages a little bit, but there's going to be a lot more involved in this conversation today. But Arjun has been featured on CNBC, Bloomberg. Let me pronounce that correctly. I've had a lot of caffeine this morning, so I got to slow it down. The thing I think is really cool is two-time world champion in Taekwondo, correct? That's pretty awesome, man. Been in the mortgage business 18 years, so you've seen a few ups and downs. Started in 01. And so it's pretty awesome, man. Arjun, first of all, thank you for joining me today. I'm really appreciative of this. Love to have you on here. We got a chance to talk a little while back at a Sky, and we've been communicating a little bit since then. And just really excited to have you as part of the show today. So I want to start just real quick. I always like to do this with all my guests, is give a little bit of a background about yourself, you know, where you're from, where you grew up, that type of stuff, because I think that's always important for for everyone watching.
Definitely, Darren, and thanks, man, for having me on, brother. We kind of hit it off as friends, like as if we'd known each other for years when we met.
I know.
And we'd been in each other's like kind of crosshairs for a while because of all the mutual contacts and our CEO being a good friend of yours, and he's told me about you for years, man. So
I've had Chris on a while back. He was great.
I appreciate you for everything you do for the industry and space. You're an entrepreneur in the real estate space, which all of us appreciate because it helps elevate the industry. Everything you've done with your brokerage, but the fact that you're so active in spreading message and positivity, not only through your own personal brand, but this podcast, man. So I applaud you for it, and I'm proud to be associated with. So thank you for having me on, man.
Awesome, thank you.
But so I grew up in Reno. I went to high school and college there, and I got into the industry my senior year of college. And of course, nobody sets out to be in mortgage. It happened by pure accident. But also one that was kind of a big tidal wave. It was 2001 at the time. The industry was exploding, particularly in the state of Nevada, with brokerages popping up all over the place. And I hopped on one that needed some help with stuff in Reno, going door to door and collecting paperwork, because that's the era we were in. There was nothing digital. None of this was on computer. Like, there were handwritten applications. So now I've really aged myself.
Carbon copies.
Yeah, totally, man. Fax machines. I mean, we had loads of them, right? Everyone had one in their office. But now, I mean, it happened so fast, but it was 20 something years ago, 22 years ago. And I stayed in the industry through the market crash, eventually moving prior to it out to the Bay Area to open an office for our Nevada-based company. And I would go back and forth between both markets. Market crash happened, kind of had a lot of figuring out to do when soul searching. Stayed within the industry. We never stopped or quit. We had to kind of wait during that odd period. And for those of you listening that were in the industry, or you had friends or relatives that were in it, it was just a very kind of dark and weird time. Mm-hmm. But have stayed in it. And then it recently, in the last 6 years, have gotten very heavy into bringing a different level of value to the real estate partners that I collaborate with, to the community itself, to other fellow marketers, the overall space, and fellow mortgage people, which is being a content creator and trying to level up and become a better marketer, which is an ongoing process. But it's made the business a lot more interesting. It's how I'm connecting with people like yourself, Darren. Like it's making the world a lot smaller of a place. It's creating immense opportunity, and that's what I'm passionate about sharing with people out there.
That's awesome, man. And that's what I do want to give you credit on. I sat on, I don't know if you were on that call a while back. Chris had invited me on with All Western Mortgage to kind of give my insight from an agent's perspective on how mortgage, how lenders can get more business from agents. And one of the things I shared was just, becoming an asset versus a liability, creating value for yourself. And that's what you've done. And you've done an incredible job at that by offering services and value first without the expectation of something in return. But that return, already, as you and I have talked over the last couple of weeks, and we've started talking about working together more with video, I'm thinking, oh man, how can I send Arjun business, right? Like I want to reciprocate that, because I think any professional does that, right? And so I think that's been such a great thing, and it's such a great learning lesson for anybody in this business. And that's where I want to start first, is that, I think especially for a lot of people watching, we have a lot of real estate agents and lenders and stuff watching this segment. I know you started, I think you told me your story, first of all, when you started in mortgage, it was you were in your fraternity, right? With your fraternity brothers. And but at first, you weren't selling, right? You were doing something else for I apologize, I don't recall, but if you could share that with us.
Yeah, no, I was literally just collecting paperwork. I was president of my fraternity. So, and I knew I always wanted to end up in business because my father was in business. He was vice president in the university up there in Reno. And so I always loved being around people and the hustle and the grind and, just anything that embodied an entrepreneurial spirit. So this was something where I could get dressed up and show up at people's homes, collect their paperwork, have them sign off on stuff. And I just loved it. I was super excited about it. But they got me involved and they were paying me $500 a house to go to pick up stuff. And there'd be about 4 or 5 appointments a week.
Wow.
Now, when I did the math, that made me a 1%er in college.
Yeah.
Like I was already making more than anybody else in college who was waiting tables or bartending or DJing. And I was also a DJ too on weekends. But yeah, it's what got me really excited, of course, because like there's no shame in it. Like everyone, especially at that age, we're motivated by money or the prospect of making money and then doing something good with it, hopefully.
Yeah.
And I saw that. I was like, wow, okay, how do I get on the other side of this? How do I actually do what all these guys in Vegas are doing and having me run around up here in Reno? So me and my brother and another fraternity brother, the three of us just opened an office. We signed a lease on a commercial space and near downtown Reno. We hired all of the pledges in my fraternity to work the phones and literally run a call center that would call veterans around the country from 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. every night. And we just worked it. And it was a lot of fun. We had no idea what we were doing in some respects, but we learned as we went. And it was a pretty exciting and fast time.
So I want to point that out. I think that's 2 important things from that. One, especially for agents or lenders that are just stepping into the business, right? Or they got into it 2 years ago when we were going up and they're like, oh man, this is going to be awesome. And now reality has hit in the last 6 months. I think two things to remember is one, a lot of times we do go into this, I was just sharing with Scott here as well, with even with my business, you walk into it thinking that you know what you're doing sometimes and you start to really discover really quickly, you'll never know everything, right? You can never fully plan it out. You can do all the business plans and all the budgeting and all that stuff that you want, but there's always going to be things that come up. And really part of business is just figuring out as you go and having the ability to do that. And I think the other thing to point out that you just mentioned is that where you started. It's not like you started off doing the loans. You were just literally going and picking up paperwork for these guys and learning. And, I share with agents all the time, especially when they're asking like, hey, how do I get into luxury? I'm like, look, man, go pair yourself, whether it's in this market or other markets, go find a luxury agent and shadow them and tag along with them, and truly add value and start to learn from them. And I'm sure that's a lot of what you got in the beginning, right?
No, I really appreciate you saying that because I think for all of us in any industry, but particularly in real estate, we've gotten so used to instant gratification and we've gotten so used to, and some of it is, you've been fed, a bunch of false BS of entitlement and thinking that you can just start at any level. Like everyone's got to pay their dues.
Yeah.
Everybody does in any industry. And I'm not saying that you have to tolerate, disrespect or you've got to diminish, lower your value. That's not it. You got to learn and you got to grind and you got to earn the opportunity or earn the right. I call it singing for your supper, right? Like it doesn't just happen. So like for you and your business, as you just said, agents come up to you and say, hey, I want to start in luxury. No, you pair up with somebody, learn it at the entry level, like understand the mechanics, the fundamentals.
Yeah.
Right. The same for us. Like I did the exact same thing. And even people that join our organization or that we're training across the country, it's the same thing because bull markets will never actually really tell you where you are. Everyone's an expert in a bull market. The last 2 years, it was a fantastic market. Getting into the industry in 2001, 2002, for those 4 or 5 years was a run up. The last 10 years, leading up to COVID for the most part, housing's been in a boom.
Yeah.
But you start to develop a false sense of security that maybe you're the secret sauce when actually all we were was facilitators.
Yeah.
Now we're at an inflection point in the market. And many industries are facing this, but particularly real estate, which is what this is about. And it's what brings you and I together, is kind of having this look in the mirror moment of saying, okay, what is it that I really do bring to the table? How good am I at what I do? Maybe there's some doubts in there and that's totally fine. All of us have gone through it at some point over the last year because these have been some head scratching moments and they're going to continue to happen. It's not a matter of if they happen, it's a matter of when. They're part of cycles. But it also is a reminder that you get back into the gym, you get back into the office, you get back into that workshop under the tent and hone in on your craft, define what it is that makes you different, get better, get sharper, provide more value, make sure that you are indispensable no matter what is going on in the marketplace. And then you'll outlast everything. You'll outlast any market cycle, competition, disruption, technology, all of that stuff. So that's the call to action for everybody here. So pay your dues. Don't worry about where you're starting. Grind, commit to learning, be humble. That's a huge missing trait in most industries. Everyone just comes in expecting to be paid and expecting to have a role and expecting to have an office and things rolled out for them. And nobody, everything is earned. Everything is earned. So, earn it.
And I think a lot of these guys, I think they forget what they are doing is they are building a business, right? So I always share with agents and everything. I'm like, look, no matter what business, if you're opening up a retail store or a restaurant, that first 3 to 5 years is your biggest struggle, right? That's like the toughest time to get through to build your business and build your self-credibility, because on the outside also consumers are looking at you, you're dealing with all of their deepest and darkest financial information, right? I'm learning all their, inside secrets about their house and everything like that. And stuff that they don't share with everyone. So, I think a lot of agents forget and lenders do as well, is that I think part of the process is the trust factor, developing that relationship and building the trust over time. And that doesn't just happen with a single phone call or dropping off a flyer or, sending an email. That's built with staying consistent over time and following up with that client. One of the things I wanted to talk to you about that, since you have started in 2001, you obviously went through the really great time of like 2005 to 7.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about like that 2000 to 2010 era. Were there plenty of points within that? I mean, I've heard agents relate it to today, to that time period. I'm like, look, we're not even close to 2008, 2009, and 10. Share with me some of your experiences during that time. Like, were there times where you're like, damn, man, I'm going to have to do something different or quit, or I got to find another job? What kept you going through that rough time when we didn't know when we were going to come out of it?
No, I mean, those were dark days. And to your point, they're not, it's not to diminish what anyone's feeling right now. If this is your only frame of reference of a shifting market, then it feels like it's pretty cataclysmic or catastrophic, right? It's heavy.
Yep.
But for those of us that have been through other markets, when we lend the perspective of saying, hey, this is nothing like '08, it's not to diminish what you're feeling. It's to just, again, give you that perspective, because those were truly dark days.
Yeah.
I mean, for a good year, they were having to work out the regulatory reform where there was no compensation for even doing a mortgage.
Oh, wow.
You pretty much just placed it. I mean, there was some scrap in the deal, but it was like you couldn't even make money. There wasn't even a way to be entrepreneurial or actually make a living from it. You were facilitating transactions because they were still trying to revamp the compensation rules and laws, how these loans were going to be securitized, Fannie and Freddie going into receivership. Like there was so many moving parts, much bigger than anyone can even begin to get their head around. And there were, everybody in the industry, and most of it flushed out, I'd say 95% of the industry on both sides, real estate and mortgage. Only the real players just stayed, people that had built a good book of business and had done right by their clients and had some kind of value to offer in the beginning. They were the ones that had staying power because they knew ultimately at the end of the day that they're good at what they do.
Yeah.
They have something to offer. They just need the environment to be able to offer it in. So that needed to clear up. Those clouds needed to clear. And they eventually did. So that was something that I knew about what it is I did, because I knew, my love of people and trying to solve problems, and the group that I was a part with my brother and our partner, like we knew that. And we had such a good level of success with it. So we knew we'd be able to last. We just needed to find that road that we were going to go down because it was not clear. So there was moments where we're like, I don't know, we're going to have to do something to kind of make money in the middle here. Like, how do we get by? It was a good year before even putting another dollar in our pockets. So we lived off savings. Luckily, we had been smart through that time, because you and I both know there was 90% of the people that were making so much money during that time were just blowing it, right? They basically took on lifestyles that matched that income or even exceeded it.
Yeah.
And when the music stopped, there was no way to fund it anymore. So we stayed somewhat within our means to the point where we could last for a year. We had a lot of oxygen in the tank to be able to hang on and tread water, which I'm grateful for. And I preach that to everyone in the industry, right? Because again, crazy times are not a matter of if they happen, they're just a matter of when. So you've always got to be prepared and double down for that moment. So we thought about that. Obviously, once the market finally cleared up and some opportunities started presenting itself, we recognized there's far less competition because no one wanted to get into the mortgage industry then. Like it was like, it was a curse almost. And you were almost embarrassed to say it. You were going into it because the industry was being blamed for the collapse of the economy, for the Great Recession, right? It's because of you. You're in housing. You are to blame for this. You led us off a cliff. So it created massive opportunity because of that shift in that sentiment out there. There was such less competition and no one was ever not going to be in need of housing, right? Like shelter is something that's never going away. So we recognize we're in the right space, but we just need to find new footing and retool ourselves and figuring out what it is that we bring to the marketplace, really dive in on that niche and just drive that home, and how we market and the culture we create for the people that work for us. And that's what we did. So we had that, but again, there were some really dark times. Now what we're facing is, tightening markets, an inventory crisis, not a banking crisis.
Yep.
And, and a difficult size pool of buyers and consumers to connect with. But 600,000 agents and lenders are exiting this business in 2023. Most of that's already happened.
Yeah.
So your competition, again, similar to 07, 08 for us, your competition is shrinking. So if you're an agent or a lender, you welcome this, you relish this now, because there's a lot of people who just don't need. I mean, the industry got a little bit heavy, right?
Yeah.
Like it just needs a fleshing, and it's just necessary. So there's huge opportunity in what's going on right now. It's nothing compared to 08. And I think everyone should really seize it optimistically that way, because I believe it.
Yeah.
I know you do too.
Oh yeah, most definitely, man. These are the times that, I've always said, like the most down times or the times that are the roughest, the most exciting thing about that is on the backside of that is going to be is the upside. And that's where you write it up, and stay consistent. And that leads into talking about even with what you're doing with social media, because I share this with the agents on my team all the time. I'm like, look, as things start to get tighter, the reality is that means you can still make just as much money as you did last year in the good market. You can still grow your business. You just you have to start thinking a little bit differently and doing things a little bit differently and expanding your reach so that you're touching more people, right? Maybe now only, 3 out of every 10 people are going to buy a house, versus where last year it was 6 out of 10. So now instead of speaking to, 10 people, you need to speak to 20 people. And you need to ramp that up. And I think that's where, with what you're doing with all the, social media marketing and everything like that, I'm a huge believer in that, because I think that is how you can now go from, the traditional way of reaching out to people, of calling them, or going and knocking on doors. Now you can reach hundreds of thousands of people at one time and cast a wider net to be able to capture more of those people. And so tell us a little bit how social media has changed your business.
Yeah. So I mean, the reason I got into it was because I had another moment where I was contemplating quitting. It was about 6 years ago.
Really?
I got stood up. I got stood up for a meeting with an agent. He didn't show up to a coffee and kind of canceled on me a bit abruptly and rudely. I got yelled at by a couple of agents that same day. And then I had a client cancel on me and drop their deal in the middle of the escrow and switch lenders because they walked into their bank and their banker said, if you move all your assets here, I'll give you 0.5 point off. Something that I couldn't really compete with. So I started scratching, man. I was like, man, I feel like I should, the universe is trying to tell me something. Like, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. So I called my business coach, who's a mortgage and real estate guy, and he coaches people within the industry. He's well known. And I started with him in 08, 09, right around the market crash. And we've been together ever since. He's still my guy. And he does a lot of mindset work with me, which was instrumental in my martial arts competition days. And I just asked him, like, hey, man, what do you think? I think I should walk from this, and I didn't think he was going to give me advice because he was worried about losing me as a client. But he actually just told me, look, I know you're good at what you do. You know you're good at what you do. The people you work with know you're good at what you do. But does anybody else? Does anyone else really know? And I said, no, they don't. If I'm honest, if they Google me, they're only going to find out my martial arts history and background, but they're not going to know anything about what I do in mortgage or for this space. And I'm trying to be a thought leader and help. He says, well, I don't know what the answer is, but you got to change that. Figure it out what you'd have to do to change that. So social was the way. I ended up attending a Gary Vaynerchuk conference with my brother in Miami just months later. And all the dots started kind of connecting at that point. Like, this is what I have to do, because it's a visibility and an awareness game. It's not about business. Too many people get into creating an online presence or any marketing task. I'm sure you deal with this too. You have a brokerage, like people just think and they attach this metric of, hey, if you do X, you're going to get X.
Mm-hmm.
And they apply that to social media, but that's not the same, right? Like,
No.
one of the things I admire about you so much is your dedication and commitment to fitness. But you also know how funny it is for people that join a gym and after 2 weeks say, I don't think this is working. I'm not seeing the change. So I'm just going to quit my membership, right? It is a long game.
Yep.
And so is this. So for me, I didn't care if everyone did business with me. I'm not for everyone, and I don't want to be for everyone, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of people I don't want to work with. It's not just a one-way street.
Exactly.
But I can control who knows me.
Yeah.
And my currency was going to be that awareness and visibility. And I said, look, you may not do your mortgage business with me, but you all will know who I am. That was my only goal.
Mm-hmm.
And that's still been my goal in the marketplace. So I just got out on this and ran as fast as I could, throwing stuff against the wall, trial and error. I'm still learning. I'm still a student of the game. You're never done, especially in the space of marketing. But it was about just creating that awareness and status. And that's what we did. And, that's what I'm continuing to do. But that's how I got started in this and why I've been really committed to it. It's transformed my business, not just in a dollars and cents standpoint, but because it's changed the view of how real estate professionals and people in the community view me.
Mm-hmm.
I've created and I've earned through some very consistent commitment and dedication. I've earned the right to be able to stand in certain rooms or be involved in certain conversations now. And when I meet with people, they've seen stuff from me, which starts our conversation and meeting from a different place. Yeah. I call it the second and third date syndrome.
Yeah.
A first date is like an interview.
Yeah.
You're talking. I mean, you've been out to coffee with enough lenders that are like, it's this artificial conversation of how they're great at what they do, what they can try and do for you, and then what do they got to do to earn your business?
Yeah.
But imagine getting like a second or third meeting with that person. You're going to really get into the meat of how this could become a real profitable dynamic and productive dynamic for the both of you. That's what social media will do. It will change how people view you. It will change how your meetings are actually going to take place and ultimately end up, because they're just starting from an elevated place where I've already seen from you. I love that thing that you posted recently. I know that you know what you're talking about because I see it all the time. I can't open up my computer without running into something of yours on one of these platforms. So I already have a little bit of respect and acknowledgement of what it is that you do. So let's just get into it. Let's find some ways to work together and not just have this artificial back and forth, but get into the business of it. And that's what I love about it.
Yeah, it really expedites the relationship, right? Like what could typically take you a year of stopping into someone's office and calling them and emailing them and sending them letters and taking them to lunch. I mean, you can really crunch that down into a few months because that person's seeing you every day. And I think it goes back to, again, it goes back to trust. And this is what I share with the agents all the time. I'm like, especially for real estate agents are one of the least trusted professionals out of any industry. And
big time. Yeah.
And
lenders too.
Yeah. And lenders too. And the thing is that the only way you can really overcome that is people have got to get to know you. And so that's where I think social media is so great, is because you get yourself out there. And the reality is, and I tell the agents this all the time, I'm like, when people are watching you, or when they see you, people are much more real nowadays, right? Like they know if they sit down with you for lunch, Arjun, and they've got a background in martial arts, there's something that you guys can connect about and talk about for the majority of the time. And then there's only a small percentage of your conversation that really is about mortgages, right? and
totally, because ultimately we do business with those that we like, right? Like we're drawn towards commonality. Yeah. So I didn't mean to cut you off, but I just wanted to say that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's where it's so important, is that people get to know you long before, because they, also they can see a picture, a static image on a postcard or something like that. And then they get to decide, what they think of you or how you may act, because they don't know anything else. They're only judging you based off of a photo. But if they get to hear you speak and they get to talk to, basically they're talking to you through, whether it's through DMs or whatever, and they get to hear you speak and learn from you. That's where I think the trust factor starts to get built. And then you do become that person that they want to turn to for your services. And so that's why I think social media is so important. And you've done, same thing with you. Like, before I even met you in person, I already had an idea of your personality. I'm like, oh, this guy, he seems cool and fun. So I won't feel uncomfortable walking up and saying hi to him, because I can tell he's probably an easy person to speak with, right? And so that's where I think social media helps expedite our relationships, is just because you get to see that person's character on camera. So
definitely
tell us a little bit about, I think, lenders and real estate agents, we have very similar. Our business is very much aligned. We pretty much do the same thing. We just handle different parts of it. But I think the way that we obtain our business and everything else is pretty much the same. Tell me a little bit about what your week looks like. How do you plan out? I think this is always an important thing. And I found this is more and more important all the time. I have agents ask me all the time, especially new agents, like, well, what should my week look like, right? Because these are people that are going from a 9 to 5. Now, all of a sudden, they've got the freedom to be able to do what they want. And I've found lately that one of the biggest frustrations for most, especially new agents or even a buddy of mine, he just started as a lender. One of the biggest frustrations is like, well, what do I do? Right? So tell us a little bit about what your week looks like.
I think for everyone, and this is something I've subscribed to, there has to be a proportionate amount of input and output in your week and what you're doing when you get into this entrepreneurial space, because now you have to create a schedule. It's going to require immense discipline and structure, and you have to stick to it because it's very easy to deviate. Most people are like, oh, I want to become a real estate agent and lender because I can have my own schedule and I can just kick back and do whatever. You will end up broke and out of that business and back in a 9 to 5 very quickly. There's nothing glamorous about what it is we do in this self-employed space. It's much harder, right? We're chasing rewards that are years down the road that we're hoping and working towards, and we feel confident we'll get there, but it takes time. It takes a lot of commitment and discipline. And if you don't have that, you're gonna be in trouble. So what I mean by input and output, input is stuff that I take in. A good amount of my week, there's a certain amount, maybe an hour to 90 minutes a day that is spent on input, meaning getting smarter, like stuff coming into me, education, data, knowledge, anything. You've got the greatest university in the world that's out there and it's free admission. Everyone's admitted. It's YouTube University. You can learn so much and make yourself smarter and more dynamic in other aspects of our industry. And that's what I try and spend time on input. So I would tell anyone that's looking to create structure, make sure you use a calendar and you time block out and dedicate a little bit of time each day. Maybe it's while you're having coffee. Maybe it's while you're eating lunch. Don't waste time and just sit and do nothing. There needs to be productivity in everything you're doing. And then the rest of your day has got to be focused on output measures, things that you're actually getting done and putting out there, in the way of some business development tasks or, putting together a marketing program, right? Actually creating content, getting out there and looking at inventory, studying up on more loan products and putting out information about it if you're a lender. So input, output, that's how I divide up my week. Because I'm so heavy into marketing, and I'd say 80% of my week is dedicated into content creation and marketing. Wow. The other, basically working on the brand and expansion of that brand. And then the other 20% is actually doing loans. Part of that brand expansion, though, is the relationships that I have with all members of the real estate community and people that I work with. So it's not that only 20% of the time is dedicated towards that. 20% of my time is working with my team and the grind of the mortgage itself, the process, dealing with the markets of that. But that's how I've got my days, my week pretty much laid out, because I have to be focused on those things because that's where business is going to come from. So if you're just starting or you're kind of established or you're revamping yourself, take a good look at what you're spending time on now. Designate whether it's an input or output task. Is it stuff that I'm actually putting out and creating, like there's a result coming from it, or I'm actually getting something from this? Or is it input time? Figure that out, balance out your week with it. Some weeks might be heavier on one than the other. That's okay. But you have to fill your time and not allow for that opportunity to kind of be doing nothing, right? Because all of us cannot afford that. We can't afford wasted potential, wasted time, wasted opportunity. Because literally every day in this race right now, every hour is an opportunity to get better. And if you're not seizing that, you're going to be left behind, because it is a race and things are moving fast. We can all do it. We've got control over it here, but you got to be disciplined.
And some of that area where you're studying, is it all mortgage related? Is it just business related? So
I love that you asked this. I love that you asked this because I think the biggest thing, a shift that we all as an industry have to make, is to become advisors in our space. A real estate agent is someone that can fill out contracts, show homes, show up for inspections, and be there at closing and call the lender and say, where are my docs, right? Yep. That's a real estate agent. A real estate advisor is someone that is more dynamic, understands markets, economics, is learning about what's going on with these debt ceiling debates is actually going to have an impact on the mortgage market and ultimately their housing investment. And they're trying to take those frames of reference and apply it, help somebody grow their real estate portfolio, help someone understand taxes better. That is an advisor. An advisor is indispensable. Your money advisor, your financial advisor, you're not firing them, right? Because they're an advisor.
Yep.
If they were just someone that put money into the accounts that you told them to do, that's nothing more than a facilitator or a task taker. On the lending side,
no value to that.
A loan, exactly. There's no value in it whatsoever. A loan officer just, talks to a client, takes in paperwork, gives out a pre-approval letter, locks an interest rate, and gets a loan closed. And they're very casual about doing it. They can do it from their home, on their couch, whatever they can do. That's a loan officer. I don't want to be a loan officer. I would like that. That would be regression for me. And I get that's where a lot of us start. But I need to study inventory. I need to study what it is that you look at, Darren, as a real estate professional. Not that I'm trying to replace you. I just need to have some frames of reference so that I can apply it to my conversations and my day-to-day. I need to know what's going on with the bigger picture in the economy also. I need to understand what's happening with global events and how that's impacting things. Politics, all of these things. The more that I know, the better understanding I have about money, compound interest, taxes, all these things. Now I can help my clients make better decisions, and I become indispensable. I become an advisor that they can't be without. So if you make yourself valuable, so valuable that they can't tune you out, you'll always have a job. And that's in any industry. That's for all of us. Like young people ask, I talked to a group of, it was a young professionals network last week, and somebody said, what's your best advice for someone that's entering this recession? I said, just be so valuable that they can't get rid of you.
I love it.
Because they won't. If you are that valuable, Darren, you run a business. I mean, you're starting a brokerage. This is one of the most difficult things to do in the real estate space, right? No matter how bad times get, the most valuable people in your organization, you will never let them go because you can't be without them because they're so valuable. Yep. So if you're so valuable, it doesn't matter what's going on economically. It could be a depression. It could be a full-on market crash. You will always have work. But if you're someone that's not doing anything special, or you can be replaced by AI or technology, which is a real threat and it's happening.
Yeah.
Which means you got to level up here. You got to get better. Otherwise, your days are numbered. So you make yourself so invaluable and so irreplaceable or indispensable that they can't ever look past you. You'll always have work. So that's my advice to anyone in the space. But that's what I do. That's what I want to make sure I do. So that's my commitment. And to answer your question fully there, the studying I do, the input I do is on the bigger picture. It's not just loan guidelines. My team does that. They're much smarter than me. Yeah. My team is so great at figuring out loan guidelines and how something's going to work and play. A lot of my conversations with clients are on the higher level in the big picture strategy. Yep. But I want to get better at taxes. I want to get better at money. I want to get better at markets. I want to get better at investment, and all of that stuff, because that'll make me more valuable.
I love it, man. That leads me into my next question for you is, where do you see the market going? Not on a micro level, like over the next couple months. We hear those conversations daily in the news, and I think everybody's informed enough about that. I like to look at where is the industry going in general, and what are you seeing? What changes do you see will happen in our industry over the next 3, 5, 10 years that you're preparing yourself for now?
I think the industry is, it's undergoing a renaissance, and I'm sure you agree with it too, because you look at the same things and have a lot of the same conversations that I do, on this level. The commoditized experience is going to be a thing of the past. People don't need a real estate transaction or a mortgage. They can go online and do that. They can deal with an iBroker. They can deal with an internet bank. They can walk into their bank. Not a regional bank, because those are dangerous, but they can walk into a big bank. They can walk into, I had to do it, man. I had to say it. So they can do that stuff, which means, I think the masses of so many people that offer the services that we do is going to get purged. And it's already happening, like we talked about earlier in this conversation. And I know you see it there in that market. I see it here in the Bay Area. It's absolutely happening. Mm-hmm. So what's going to be left are people that are, back to the earlier point, they're indispensable. So I think the industry is now heading for a place where they'll just be true advisors that cannot be replaced by technology. They've actually embraced technology. They've embraced AI, mm-hmm. and they're facilitating it as part of their business modeling, yep. and their planning and the services they offer, which makes them better, right?
Yeah.
Those who embrace technology won't ever be replaced. Technology can replace the person who is not embracing it. Yep. Those people's days are numbered, but it's not that there's going to be this takeover and robots are going to do everything that we do. We might have robot assistants. We might have technology that actually aids us in doing what we're doing. But if we're good and we can remain, good facilitators of that product. but embracing all these things, then we're going to be better. So I see the industry's going there. I see, over the next 5 to 10 years, fewer agents, fewer lenders, really truly good ones that people are drawn to with very strong brands, very memorable, unforgettable brands that have their feet really dug into the sand to be able to outlast. And then for everything else, there's just a quicker, cheaper, more efficient model if you want to do it, right? Just like you can get your insurance through eSurance. You don't have to call an insurance broker.
Yeah.
And it'll be the same for mortgage and real estate. I think that's where it'll go. So if you're kind of in the middle there, where you really don't have much to offer and you've been a facilitator, I think this space won't have room for you, probably sooner than later.
Yeah.
But those that are good will rise. Everything else will just be in the technology space and without people, but more of systems. And I think that's where the industry goes if I had to put my money on it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I see kind of the perfect version of a real estate agent or advisor. I like that. I'm going to adopt that and start using that. Is the combination, especially because people are getting so frustrated with lack of service nowadays as well, right? Like that's the thing I keep sharing with everyone on my team. I'm like, guys, we have to provide this super high level of service. If the only communication you have with your client is through email or text message, then you're no different than the computer anymore, right? And you're not, there's no added value for you anymore. So that's super, I think I agree with you. The accessibility to that technology, right? Because everything is at the tip of everyone's fingers. So having your client have the ability to have access to that, backed with the super high level and personalized customer service, I think is where we're going to go over the next 5 to 10 years. And those are the advisors that will survive any market. I think this is actually the best time to get into it, because if you get into the market now with that approach, I really do believe that you'll be at the top within the next 5 to 10 years.
100%, no doubt.
So let's talk fitness for a second, man, because this is part of my podcast as well as fitness. You've got an incredible background in martial arts. How do you see Arjun? Like I tell people all the time, I'm like, man, it's crazy. All the years of training and competing, I'd never understood how that was going to relate to business. Flash forward 20 years later, and and almost on a daily basis, there's things that I do that all relate to fitness.
Yep.
How many things do you see that you learned from martial arts? I know obviously one of them was discipline, right?
100%. I mean, I got into martial arts as a kid who was bullied, like a lot of people did. I watched the original Karate Kid.
Okay.
Like that makes me really old, right? Like the original one.
Yep, right there with you.
And I'm a huge Cobra Kai fan. Like that show's so good.
Oh, me too.
So much fun to watch. It's great. But that's what I got into it. And then, I had no idea where it was going to actually take me, but I did it and it raised my confidence, which is something